IMF, and the whispers of the gold keepers. There are stories never written in textbooks, pages of history never opened in classrooms. But if you listen closely between the lifeless economic reports and the sterile financial indicators quoted daily by the press, you might feel a different rhythm, a dark, pulsing heartbeat, a system not governed by law, but by promise. A promise signed in blood and blind faith. They call it reserve currency. They call it the IMF. They call it the FED. But in truth, it is a play, directed from behind, locked, lightless, doors where power needs no gunfire, only a nod. To begin this story, we must return to 1944, when the world lay in ruins between war and hope. In a peaceful town called Bretton Woods, 44 nations gathered to rewrite the fate of global money. They believed they were building a fairer world, but in truth, they were handing the keys to those who would lock the door forever. It was here that the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank were born. And the US dollar, at that time merely a national currency, was crowned king on one condition. It was backed by gold. 1 ounce of gold equaled $35. The world clung to that number like a sacred spell. But no one asked, how much gold did the United States really have to keep that promise? In the shadows, the U.S. Federal Reserve, the Fed, began writing the first chapter of a game no one fully understood. They printed money. They expanded credit. They spent as if gold were infinite. The Cold War, the Vietnam War, the space race all were funded by dollar bills no one dared to reject. And when nations started to doubt, when France demanded its gold back, when Germany sent ships to reclaim its bullion, the inevitable happened. In 1971, President Nixon announced the end of the dollar's convertibility to gold. The door slammed shut. The game officially began. From that moment, the world was no longer anchored to gold. It was anchored to blind faith in the strongest currency. A currency backed not by metal reserves, but by aircraft carriers and trade treaties. And the IMF, originally conceived to safeguard global monetary stability, became the tool through which harsh conditions were imposed on vulnerable nations. They lent money, but with strings attached. Slash public spending, privatize, open markets to foreign investors. Countries already dying from crisis were forced to swallow a bitter potion called structural reform. And those very pills opened the floodgates for Western capital to pour in like a storm, washing away local industries, agriculture, and financial sovereignty. The IMF didn't just lend money. It rewrote the economic operating system of entire nations. And every time a new government took office, they were met with slanted lines of text-to-contract signed by predecessors, a debt to be paid in blood, in taxes, in stolen futures. Meanwhile, gold, the quietest of all metals, seemed to vanish from the tale. But it didn't. It was simply hidden, quietly, secretly. Most of it rests in vaults across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland, countries that have never allowed a full audit of the gold they claim to hold. Germany once asked the U.S. to return 300 tons of gold. It took 7 years, and no one ever saw those bars with their own eyes. They were merely told, the gold is home, and that was enough. No one dared to ask further, because in this game, trust is the greatest asset and the most sophisticated weapon of manipulation.